My sisters and my brothers, the Lord be with you. Thank you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Glory to you, O Lord. Jesus addressed this parable to those who were convinced of their own righteousness and despised everyone else. Two people went up to the temple area to pray. One was a Pharisee and the other was a tax collector. The Pharisee took up his position and spoke this prayer to himself. O God, I thank you that I am not like the rest of humanity, greedy, dishonest, adulterous, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week, and I pay tithes on my whole income. But the tax collector stood off at a distance and would not even raise his eyes to heaven, but beat his breast and prayed, O God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, the latter went home justified, not the former. For whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and the one who humbles himself will be exalted. The Gospel of the Lord. Good morning, everyone. So I have a question for all of you today. Have you ever been so excited about being able to watch more commercials on television about things like which insurance to buy or which foot powder to buy to cure your athlete's foot than you are during this political season? Just 17 more days and all of those political ads will be over, and I think we've all had our fill of each and every one of them. And it's not like that doesn't happen during every political season, but it does seem to me that it's even worse this year. And I think one of the reasons that it is because with all the ads we see, in so many of them, we have no idea who is telling us the truth. The reason I say that is, as soon as one side's ad appears on the television, the very next day the other side is coming out and saying, that's not true, that's a lie. So if one's saying it's true and the other isn't, someone isn't telling us the whole truth. And I think the reason it's so difficult during this time to tell the truth is because we're not hearing as much about policies that one side is pushing over another, but we're hearing all of these vicious personal attacks that we are making in these advertisements against one another. They're so hurtful. They seem to be filled with such anger and such incivility and disrespect for one another that it makes it very difficult for us to make a choice. And one of the things also that has become very difficult for me is to see on social media all of the hateful and name-calling things that are going on. How many of you are on Facebook by a show of hands? Okay, so some, but the majority of you are not. For those of you who are not, you ought to thank God that you never signed up to be on Facebook. And the reason I say that is, you can't be on Facebook at any time of the day or night right now, and within 2 minutes of being on, find something extremely hurtful, something extremely derogatory being said about a candidate that we're opposed to. And they are such personal attacks in name calling that I've never seen happen before, coming from people who are normally good and decent people, but who are so caught up in the incivility of this election season that they're doing the very same thing with the name calling that they're throwing around of the candidate just because they don't agree with them. And you see so many people posting and reposting messages from other people as if they're the gospel truth. And I guess maybe we should think they are, because anything that we can find on a computer or on the internet must be 100% truthful, right? It's just so hard to see all of this when we're not supporting a candidate as much as we are trying to tear down another one. It makes it so difficult to make choices and to see what's happening to our society and to normally good and decent people. But thank goodness we do have good examples to fall back on. And one which is a shame that it's occurring, all of this election animosity is occurring this year because Pope Francis has declared this the Jubilee year of mercy. A year where he says mercy changes the world. Not politics, but love and mercy. And Pope Francis reminds us that the mercy of God is his loving concern for each one of us. Just as the Father loves, so do his children. And just as he is merciful, so we are called to be merciful to each other. But it's so hard to find that mercy right now in our political climate because we're filled with so much anger and so much hate, when we need to replace it with that mercy of God and the mercy and love towards one another as sisters and brothers of that same God, even when we disagree. Our gospel reading today is another example of how we need to be acting. We hear Jesus tell the parable of the two men who went into the temple area to pray, the Pharisee and the tax collector. And the Pharisee began his prayer the right way by thanking God. But he says, "Oh God, I thank you that I'm not like the rest of all these other people, the rest of humanity. And I'm especially not like this lowly tax collector." This man was exalting himself, putting himself above everyone else, instead of being humble, instead of being selfless, instead of being loving, and instead of being merciful. But then the tax collector, that hated man, says this prayer to the Father: "Oh God, be merciful to me, a sinner." We are all sinners, are we not? Only Christ was the one without sin. And as such, we should all be asking God for his mercy and his forgiveness for all the sins we commit, just like the taxpayer who humbled himself, who didn't try to raise himself above everyone else. And we have living examples of ways of doing that. Today is World Mission Sunday throughout our church, throughout the world. A day when we remember in a special way all of those women and men who have given their lives, their entire lives, over to God to do one thing and one thing only. Working in some of the poorest and most dangerous parts of the world, they are working to bring Jesus Christ to those who have yet to come to know him. That is the example of selflessness. That is the example of humility and love and mercy that we all need to display in our lives in whatever way we can, just as the missionaries do every day in their lives. So I would ask you today, on World Mission Sunday, to pray in a special way today, but not just today, but to pray every day for the missionaries, because every day they are out there doing this work for the good of God and for the love of Jesus Christ. But I would also ask you today in a special way to support them financially, because they need our financial support in order to be able to travel around the world to do this merciful, loving work that they do for us. But I also think we need to pray for our country. We need to pray for our leaders of our country and those who wish to be leaders, that they can find the mercy and the love to treat one another with dignity and respect rather than anger and hate. And also pray for our leaders and those who wish to be our leaders, that they will come to the realization that any power, any authority that they have been given or will be given doesn't come from you or from me in the votes we cast for them, but that power and authority only comes to them from God. And pray also that they will find it in their hearts to do their work for the betterment and for the good of everyone, not just for a select few or not even for themselves, so that our country can once again become what it was meant to be: one nation under him, with liberty and justice for all people.